13 seconds and Jasmine Crockett slammed a yellow folder like a live grenade and exposed a $1 million check that never reached a single dying child. Eric Trump blinked. Donald Trump stood like a thundercloud, but couldn't speak. What secret was so radioactive? It turned the most powerful family in America into statues on live TV. The hearing room looked like it had been scrubbed for TV. Not a paper out of place. Not a flag that dared to ripple. Everything stiff, straight, sterile, like even the air had been told to sit still. But the tension? You could slice it like butter left too long in the sun. Cameras blinked red like warning signals. Staffers barely moved. Reporters stared over their glasses like hawks circling roadkill. And at the far end of the room, seated like the trial wasn't even about him, sat Eric Trump, relaxed, grinning, as if the whole thing was beneath him. 2 seats over, Donald Trump sat stone-still, arms crossed, like a barricade built out of pride and fear. And then Jasmine Crockett entered. She didn't smile, didn't wave. She walked like a woman who wasn't just carrying truth, she was it. Each step hit the floor like a clock winding down. She wore black, no pearls, no show, just presence. Pure, quiet, dangerous presence. At her side, a plain leather bag. Not bulging, not flashy, but heavy in a way that made your stomach twitch. She set it down slow, like it could explode if handled wrong. For 10 seconds, she didn't even open it. She just looked forward straight through the cameras as if locking eyes with every American who had ever mailed $5 to a cancer fund and prayed it helped. What nobody in that room knew yet was that 12 hours earlier, Jasmine had received an envelope. No name, no seal, just a line scrawled in red, for the children who got nothing. Inside was a copy of a $1 million check, Eric Trump's signature, a date, a promise, and a hospital that never received a single dime. She leaned in like a prosecutor cracking the first blow. Let's talk about this fake check. Let's talk about this fake check. And the room finally remembered how to breathe. The room was still spinning from Jasmine's opening line when the screen behind her flickered to life. Grainy footage from a gala the year before filled the chamber, gold chandeliers, champagne flutes, and $1,000 suit on Eric Trump. He stood center stage, flashing a practiced smile, one hand gripping a massive cardboard check like it was a trophy. $1 million, he declared, voice booming. Every cent to children battling cancer. The crowd erupted, but Jasmine didn't blink. She paused the video at the exact frame the check was raised. The oversized promise stared back at the room, frozen mid-lie. Then she turned to the committee and said, calm, as ice melting on steel St. Jude's, never received a dollar. Silence crashed like a wave. Someone in the gallery coughed loud and dry. Eric shifted in his seat for the first time. Donald Trump didn't. He stared straight ahead, unmoved, unreadable, like a man watching someone else's fire creep toward his shoes. Jasmine tapped her screen remote. A second image appeared beside the gala footage, an internal ledger from St. Jude's accounting department. Highlighted in red, no record of donation received from the Eric Trump Foundation. No wires, no deposits, nothing. A promise televised, a check paraded. But the money gone. She looked at Eric now, not with fury, but with the same calm you see in surgeons before they cut. This wasn't charity, she said. It was theater. The words sat like stones in the air, too heavy to move. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The check had spoken, and it was fake. Now the nation had a new question. If the check never cleared, what else was a lie? Jasmine didn't wait for the room to recover. She clicked again, and the screen changed. Gone were the chandeliers and stage lights, replaced by cold black and white bank records. A wire transfer, $480,000. Sender, the Eric Trump Foundation. Recipient, Red Liberty LLC. She let the name hang for a moment. This, she said, tapping the screen with her finger, is where the check really went. Eric straightened. Donald Trump leaned forward half an inch, not much, but enough. The name wasn't familiar. That was the problem. Jasmine pulled out a second document. Red Liberty LLC Incorporated, 2 weeks before the gala. No board members listed, no phone, no staff. The registered address, a closed strip mall in Nevada, wedged between a vape shop and a payday loan office. No signage, no website, not even a mailbox. just a corporate shell with a pulse made of wires and silence. This isn't a charity partner, Jasmine continued. It's a black hole, one that swallowed your promises, Mr. Trump, and spit out nothing. Eric's fingers began tapping the table. Not fast, not loud, but steady like a drum beat counting down to something he couldn't stop. Donald Trump's eyes narrowed. A vein pulsed in his neck. Still no words, still no denial. Just the sound of power realizing it had nowhere left to hide. Jasmine laid out three more transfers, 620K, 240K, 73K, all to the same dead-end shell. Each one filed under phrases like event logistics and outreach expansion. But no events were held. No outreach ever happened, only disappearing zeros. Then she asked the only question that mattered now. What if charity was never the mission, only the camouflage? And with that, Chapter 1 didn't end. It detonated. The room was still smoldering from the Red Liberty bomb when Jasmine struck again. She reached into her folder and pulled out a glossy flyer, gold-trimmed, professionally designed, elegant, in the way only lies try to be. This, she said, holding it up to the cameras, was the next big promise, the Pediatric Outreach Gala in Naples, Florida, budgeted at $400,000. The date stamped across the top read, May 18, 2023. The flyer listed a venue at the Gulf Shore Grand. Jasmine paused, then clicked the screen behind her. A new image appeared, an official statement from the venue itself stamped and signed. No event was held, no deposit was received, no booking was made under Eric Trump Foundation or any known affiliate. The words were so dry they might as well have been ash. There was no gala, Jasmine said, voice sharpening. No outreach, no dinner, no children. Just another ghost in a string of broken promises. The flyer had a menu, a guest list, even valet details, but it was all printed fiction. A $400,000 $1,000 invoice. For nothing. Eric's face twitched. His jaw clenched like it was trying to hold something back. Donald Trump looked away, eyes drifting to the wall like it might offer an exit, but there was no door big enough to hide what came next. Jasmine stepped forward, her tone colder now. They didn't even fake the venue right, she said. The catering company listed here. It went out of business in 2021, and for the first time since the hearing began, it wasn't just the public feeling betrayed, it was the paper itself finally turning on its author. Jasmine didn't give the room time to recover. She reached into her folder again and pulled out three separate documents, each printed on official letterhead, each bearing the same sweeping signature. 3 events, she said calmly, 3 budgets, 3 approval forms. Then she held them up like evidence bags at a crime scene, and all of them signed by Mr. Eric Trump. The first form was for child transport coordination, the second for outreach experience planning, the third venue and media logistics, total $390,000, all tied to the fake gala in Naples, all authorized by the same hand. She zoomed in on the signatures, displaying them side by side. Same tilt, same loop, same overconfident stroke of a man who thought no one would ever look twice. Funny, Jasmine said, eyes never leaving Eric. You've signed more fake events than condolence cards. A nervous laugh sputtered from the gallery, quickly swallowed by the tension. Eric's face didn't move, but his knuckles whitened around the edge of the table. Donald Trump sat, rigid eyes locked on the screen, like he could will the documents to vanish. But there they were, inked, stamped, and now projected for the world. Jasmine turned slightly, voice lowering just enough to make people lean in. You didn't just forge approval, she said. You choreographed fiction, dressed lies in logos, and filed them as charity. Then she stepped back, letting the silence thicken. Because forged events fade, but forged signatures never stop speaking. Jasmine didn't lift her eyes as she unfolded the first letter. The paper looked worn, creased along lines where hands had trembled. Dear Eric Trump, she read, voice low but unwavering. We saw the gala on TV. We thought maybe this time help would come. The writer signed with a first name and a date. 2 weeks after that letter was sent, the child it spoke of died. Jasmine didn't add commentary. She didn't need to. She pulled out a second envelope postmarked from Ohio. A father wrote that he'd waited months for a promised grant to cover chemotherapy. We believed you. We showed our son the clip from Naples, it read. When you shook that check on stage, he smiled. Jasmine paused, breath shallow. He died thinking you'd tried. The room was airless now. Every camera lens focused like a sniper scope. Then she dropped the third envelope, this one unopened. They never even got a reply. She tapped her remote again. The screen changed. A transfer receipt blinked onto view, $72,000, Media Optics, Red Liberty LLC. Dated the exact same week the letters arrived. Jasmine spoke slowly. While they were writing for help, you were paying to boost your image. No one moved. No one dared. Eric's face turned a shade paler. Donald Trump didn't flinch, but the silence around him screamed louder than any protest. Jasmine looked straight into the camera. What kind of leader markets a funeral? For votes. And just like that, the lie wasn't financial anymore. It was moral. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. She didn't gesture, didn't look around for approval. She simply reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small black device, plain, nondescript, the kind you'd overlook in a drawer or ignore in a meeting. She placed it gently on the table like it was sacred, or cursed. The room stiffened. Eric leaned back. Donald's hand hovered near his collar. Everyone else leaned forward. Jasmine pressed play. Static crackled, then a man's voice smooth, confident and unmistakable. Donors are dumb. Show a sick kid, they'll cry. Then we move funds. Silence hit the chamber like a punch. Jasmine didn't stop the tape. Another voice chimed in, laughing. Then it's optics. Give them a gala, give them hope, then funnel the rest. Easy. Gas, faint but real, slipped from behind cameras. Staffers froze mid-blink. Reporters dropped their pens. Eric Trump's face drained like a man watching his own obituary, drafted in real time. Donald sat stone still, jaw locked, teeth clenched, a statue under siege. Jasmine leaned in voice, cold as glass. Your team called dying children optics. You called grieving parents dumb. And the only thing you moved was their trust. She clicked to stop. No music, no edits, just the sound of a room realizing it had heard something it could never unhear. She didn't need to say whose voice it was. Everyone already knew. And yet one question still clawed at the edge of the air, louder than any recording. How many more lies were whispered? When they thought no one was listening, the tape had barely clicked off when the chaos began. C-SPAN cut the captions. MSNBC pulled back to a wide shot. Even Fox dropped to dead silence, no spin, no rescue. It wasn't just a scandal anymore. It was combustion. Donald Trump exploded from his chair like a fuse had been lit beneath it. This is slander, fabricated, manipulated audio. His voice tore across the chamber like a lightning crack. Staffers flinched. Cameras zoomed. But Jasmine didn't move. She stood still, spine-straight eyes locked not on him, but on the public. Then she spoke. That voice, she said, cool and even, wasn't manufactured. Wasn't sliced or stitched. Wasn't planted by the left or the deep state or whatever boogeyman you invent when the mirror shows your reflection. She took one step closer to the microphone. That voice belongs to your son's fundraising director. That laugh to your communications team. Donald froze. The room froze with him. Even Eric looked like gravity had suddenly changed. Jasmine tapped the table softly like a gavel. You did this to yourselves, not behind closed doors, not in back rooms, but into a microphone, because you believed no one would ever dare to hit play. The silence that followed wasn't quiet, it was loaded. Every journalist in the room reached for their phones. Viewers at home leaned in. Somewhere a pen clicked once and never again. And still the question thundered. If this was just the first tape, how many more were waiting to detonate? It started as a flicker, a 13-second clip ripped straight from C-SPAN, uploaded by a college freshman with shaky hands and a caption that read, "This ain't politics. This is evil. Trump charity scam." Within the hour, it ignited like dry grass in a lightning storm. TikTok lit up first duets, mimicking the exact moment Jasmine pressed play. Then came X, with firestorm threads dissecting every second of the recording. Within 6 hours, Reddit had pieced together a donor map. By nightfall, Trump charity scam overtook Taylor Swift's album drop. And then something even Jasmine hadn't expected. America started fighting back. Old emails resurfaced, donation receipts dated years ago. Handwritten thank you notes sent by St. Jude that no one realized were mass printed. A mother in Michigan recorded herself sobbing while holding a crumpled gala program from Naples, the one that never happened. Each story stabbed deeper than the last. A nurse revealed she donated her Christmas bonus in 2020. A father posted a photo of his son's hospital bracelet next to a bounced check labeled Patriot Kids Foundation. A Marine veteran said he skipped chemo for a month just to be able to give something back. Jasmine didn't tweet. She didn't stream. She didn't need to. The people were loud enough now. Meanwhile, Trump's legal team scrambled, issuing a half-hearted press release that used the phrase deep fake manipulation no fewer than 4 times. But the internet didn't care. It had already made up its mind. The illusion was crumbling, not from the top, but from the hearts that once believed it. And through the digital smoke, a question screamed louder than any press conference. What if the greatest fraud in American history wasn't hidden in the shadows, but applauded in the spotlight? By morning, the Capitol was no longer just marble and echo. It pulsed with pain. Protesters crowded the gates, silent, grieving, furious. They didn't carry signs. They held portraits, photos of bald toddlers gripping teddy bears, of children smiling through IV tubes, of sons and daughters who never got to grow up. The crowd didn't chant. They just stood there, a wall of ghosts with living eyes. C-SPAN cameras pivoted. News anchors went off script. A war veteran in uniform stepped through the police line, his hands trembling as he pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. He didn't speak. He held it up, a donation receipt from 2019, signed and stamped with Trump Foundation seal. Then, without a word, he tore it slow, deliberate, frame by frame, on live television. Inside the hearing room, the ripple could be felt like heat. Jasmine looked out through the glass wall, saw the storm building, not in the chamber, but out there in the faces that once believed in the flag, the gullah, the family name. And for a fleeting second, even Eric Trump seemed to shrink in his chair, like a man watching the myth of himself melt off his bones. Jasmine took a breath, steady but sharp. They didn't ask for power, she said into the mic. They asked for help. And instead, they got a lie wrapped in a tuxedo. The hearing fell deathly still. Phones buzzed. America leaned in. And the question now wasn't whether a crime had occurred, but whether the country would dare to punish the ones who committed it. At 11:03 a.m., CNN dropped its scheduled interview with a tech CEO mid-sentence. The anchor's voice returned, shaken but precise. We interrupt this segment for a congressional update involving potential fraud linked to the Trump family. By 11:06, MSNBC rolled out a breaking news banner. By 11:09, even Fox News, long the family's media shield, cut to live footage of Jasmine Crockett mid-sentence, her words punctuated by the still-burning image of a torn donation receipt in a veteran's hands. The headlines were no longer speculative. They were seismic whistleblower. Email confirms funds diverted for political optics. Republican leaders under fire after gala scam revealed. Then came the fracture no one predicted. At 11:12, Senator Raymond Holt, GOP Alabama, stepped out from a side hallway, flanked by aides and reporters. The cameras caught every second, his jaw clenched, tie loosened papers in hand. His voice cut through the media chatter like a bullet through glass. "This isn't politics," he said. "This is betrayal, and I will not be part of a cover-up that insults every American who gave in good faith." The room turned. Democrats froze. Republicans looked away. Even Eric Trump's defense attorney dropped his pen. Jasmine leaned back. She didn't smile, just whispered, barely audible, "It begins." The crowd outside roared, not in protest, but in validation. And for the first time in a decade, the words accountability and Congress didn't feel like opposites. The hearing recessed, but Jasmine didn't move. Cameras blinked. Staffers whispered. Her name trended worldwide. Some called her a hero, others a traitor. But none of that noise followed her into the private anteroom behind the chamber, where the lights were softer and the silence heavy. She didn't reach for water. She didn't check her phone. She opened a plain white envelope that had been slipped under her door. No stamp, no return address. Just one name written in careful block letters. Caleb. Inside was a child's handwriting, uneven but determined. Miss Crockett, I'm 9. My brother died after the gala. They said there was no money left. But you didn't just expose money, you saved belief. I think he can rest now. Her fingers trembled, but she didn't cry. Not yet. The soundproof walls couldn't hide the protests swelling outside. Not of rage anymore, but of release. Like a country remembering its own conscience after years of sleepwalking. She folded the letter slowly, reverently, like scripture, and slipped it into her coat pocket. No one clapped. No one high-fived. That wasn't the point. Because Jasmine Crockett didn't come to win applause. She came to bury the lie so a nation could resurrect its conscience. And in the quiet after the storm, as the chamber doors opened again, she stepped forward not to finish a fight, but to face what healing really demands. Can a truth that painful still lead to something worth believing in? At exactly 12:47 p.m., the lights dimmed, not by accident, but as if history needed a spotlight. Jasmine stepped back, and in her place stood Naomi Chen, a forensic auditor with eyes like x-rays. She didn't wear makeup. She didn't smile. What she carried wasn't theory, it was the digital corpse of a scandal. Slide 1, a wire transfer, $620,000 moved from Red Liberty LLC to a shell media firm in Nevada, named West Horizon Media. Slide 2, West Horizon had no employees, no media buys, no clients except one. A super PAC linked directly to Trump 2024 with a matching EIN and shared mailing address. Slide 3. The kicker, time-stamped emails connecting Eric Trump to both accounts weeks before the gala even occurred. Gasps rippled through the room like a dropped tray of glass. This wasn't outreach. Naomi said, her tone stripped of emotion. It was conversion. You converted grief into votes. The screen held a final phrase in red: passé compliance, waived under bundled event clause, a legal loophole, abused and buried. Jasmine stepped forward again, but now her voice didn't ask. It accused. This isn't philanthropy. It's theater funded by funerals, costumed in hope, directed by politics. She looked Trump dead in the eye. How many more children had to die? Just so your name could live longer on a bumper sticker. Eric looked ready to bolt. Donald didn't blink, but the white of his knuckles gripping the armrest said everything. In the gallery, no phones rang, no chairs squeaked. Because this wasn't just a scandal anymore. It was a ledger written in grief, and the ink had just turned red. And what kind of leader builds an empire out of the money meant to save dying kids? Naomi didn't need to raise her voice. One click and the screen behind her exploded into silence. A single email glowed like a flare in a war zone. Subject line: Q1 allocation, timestamp 2, 14 a.m., 3 days before the so-called charity gala. Content: glad Eric signed off. This will fund Q1. No ambiguity, no wiggle room, just 9 corporate words that sounded like a budget memo, but bled like a confession. Eric Trump didn't move at first. His pupils twitched. His jaw clenched and released over and over like a man chewing on a lie too big to swallow. His hands went under the table fingers, gripping each other so tight the knuckles turned bloodless. A staffer leaned forward, whispered something in his ear. Eric didn't blink. Donald Trump didn't flinch either. But something in the room shifted. It was the way his fingers stopped drumming. The way his head tilted, not in defiance but calculation. And for the first time in 2 hours, he looked at his son and didn't nod. Jasmine stepped forward, the weight of every grieving family behind her. This wasn't a speech gone wrong or a form misfiled. This was strategy. You took pain and mapped it onto a quarter. She pointed at the email. Q1, like it's toothpaste sales. Gasp burst from the press box. One woman in the crowd whispered, "Oh my God." Jasmine leaned into the mic slower now. You didn't fund hospitals. You didn't save children. You funded primaries, ads, polling teams. You saw a child's death and thought return on investment. And still Eric said nothing. Because when the truth is printed, signed and time-stamped, it doesn't need to scream. What's left to defend? When the paper trail leads straight to your name, Jasmine didn't say another word. She reached into her case and pulled out an envelope, thick white, sealed in red. The letters stamped across it read, DOJ Referral, Eric Trump Foundation. The silence in the chamber turned from shock to dread. She held it up like a verdict. Pursuant to Article 18, Section 6001, this body recommends formal investigation into financial misconduct Wire fraud and misappropriation of charitable funds under federal statute. Her hand didn't shake. Trump's lawyers shifted in their seats. Eric's lips moved, but no sound came out. The cameras zoomed in. Even C-SPAN didn't cut away. Then came the vote. 12 raised hands. 8 stayed low. No cheers, no whispers. Just numbers. 12-8. Referral approved. Outside the chamber, protesters erupted like thunder. Inside, Trump stared at the envelope as if it were radioactive. And maybe it was. Not because of the paper, but because of what it made undeniable: his name on the line. His brand now inked into a legal process he couldn't spin or silence. Jasmine placed the envelope gently on the table, exactly where Eric's hands had fumbled just minutes earlier. "This isn't personal," she said, voice low but clear. "It's justice." Reporters started typing before she even finished. The headlines were already writing themselves. She looked down the row of stunned faces. Every system has its moment. This one is ours. Because this wasn't just a hearing anymore. It was a reckoning with consequences. No NDA, no donation, no family name could erase. What happens when power is no longer above the law, but directly in its crosshairs? The chamber was still. No gavel, no chatter. Just the echo of what had been decided and what couldn't be undone. Jasmine stood there, not triumphant, not angry, just heavy. She looked out over the rows of faces, then down into memory. "My first fundraiser wasn't in a ballroom," she said. "It was in a basement under flickering lights and water-stained walls." Her voice didn't crack. It carried. She spoke of Saturday mornings frying fish with her grandmother, folding dollar bills that smelled of grease and gratitude. "We didn't have checks. We had change jars, the kind that rattled when you shook them." Laughter didn't follow, just breath held tight. She remembered little Akeem, who gave his only birthday dollar to help buy uniforms for a kid he didn't know. "They gave from the bone," she said, eyes locked on Eric, "because they didn't have fat to spare." The room wasn't Congress anymore. It was a mirror reflecting every act of giving that ever came from real need, not polished optics. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She paused. "And you called that stupid?" Nobody moved. Reporters stopped typing. Even the cameras felt slower. "Power isn't about how much you keep," she said finally. "It's about how much you're willing to lose for someone else's child." And in that moment, she wasn't just a congresswoman. She was every grandmother, every church mother, every tired worker who passed the plate when they had nothing left but faith. How do you steal from people who already gave everything they had? Jasmine didn't sit down. Instead, she lifted a small black clicker, and the room dimmed. The hearing screen lit up with a full-color photograph, a marble tasting room bathed in gold light. Velvet chairs, a wall of imported wine, each bottle tagged with a brass plaque. And in the center, Eric Trump swirling a glass mid-speech, grinning. A second photo replaced it. A hospital hallway, gray dim, lined with plastic chairs. 3 children sat against the wall, full bags hanging above their heads, coloring books forgotten on their laps. A nurse walked past, not looking up. Behind them, a handwritten sign on printer paper: "Chemo delayed. Please check again Tuesday." Jasmine's voice was calm, but it cut. He poured Cabernet while they begged for morphine. The silence was total. No coughs, no paper rustles, just the ugly sound of contrast settling in everyone's throat like smoke. She turned back to the screen. The gala raised over $400, and this is what it built: marble mirrors and marketing material. Meanwhile, kids were rationing radiation. One family drove 4 hours for a treatment that was postponed 3 times. Eric didn't look up. Donald stared forward like stone. Jasmine let the images flicker again. Luxury, desperation, applause, sobbing. Charity used to mean sacrifice, she said. Now it's branding. She clicked one last time and the screen went black. What happens when compassion becomes a photo shoot and no one stays to clean up the lie? The lights returned, but no one moved. Jasmine stood center frame, eyes calm, voice soft but steel hard beneath the breath. She didn't raise her tone. She didn't have to. "Silence doesn't make you innocent," she said. "It makes you part of the strategy." A ripple moved through the chamber like a fault line cracking open. She turned to face the lawmakers behind her, slowly scanning each seat. Every time we choose to look away to prioritize party over principle, to value image over impact, we're signing off. On this. She tapped her finger against the microphone. On delayed chemo, on ghost charities, on red carpets rolled over children's graves, the room inhaled as one. She didn't let them breathe long. I was raised by women who could smell a lie before it touched the air, she said. They told me when you stand still in front of evil, you're not neutral, you're useful. A single sheet of paper remained in her hand, slightly trembling. Not from fear, from restraint. It was a printed list every organization that had unknowingly endorsed the gala. Schools, churches, veteran groups, even a pediatric nurse association. These names didn't know they were being used. Her voice dropped to a whisper. But we do. And with that, she folded the list once, then again, and laid it gently on the desk. What if the greatest fraud in modern America wasn't just committed by the powerful, but protected by the rest of us? Because we didn't dare to look. The hearing room was empty now, just microphones cooling under the weight of what had been said. But back in her office, Jasmine sat perfectly still, staring at an envelope with a childish swirl of colors on the corner. It wasn't official, it wasn't strategy, it was crayon. Inside, folded twice like it had been guarded in tiny hands, was a drawing. Jasmine standing at a podium, arms outstretched, stars behind her. Her curls were too big. Her eyes were dots. But the message at the bottom was unmistakable, written in pencil, underlined twice. You didn't just save money, you saved our hope. She blinked slowly, fingertips tracing the paper like it might vanish. The child's name was scrawled in the corner. Caleb, 6 years old. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. He watched the hearing from a hospital bed in Memphis, surrounded by wires, silence, and the fading smell of rubbing alcohol. He'd asked the nurse to send it, said Jasmine looked like someone who didn't lie. For a moment, her shoulders dropped, not in defeat, but in release. She'd gone after the check, the shell companies, the optics. But Caleb reminded her what was never listed in the filings, the currency of belief, the kind of hope that made people give when they had nothing left but love. And it was that kind of hope that told her this story wasn't over. The lights were brutal, white hot, the kind that expose every flaw and flinch. But Jasmine didn't flinch. She stepped onto the national broadcast set, not in designer armor, not with notes, but with Caleb's drawing folded neatly in her coat pocket. The anchors didn't interrupt. The networks didn't cut away. For once, America leaned forward. She stared straight into the camera, not like a politician, but like someone who had already buried the price of silence. Do we teach our children that charity is camouflage? She asked, voice steady, eyes cutting through the lens. Or do we teach them that truth, no matter how ugly, is the start of something better? There was no podium to hide behind, no teleprompter to lean on. Because when billionaires hand out fake checks, she continued, and call it love. And we say nothing, we're not just complicit, we're counterfeit. The air crackled like the country itself had stopped scrolling and started listening. They sold grief for optics. They sold faith for campaign funds. And they sold your donations like stock options. She paused, then leaned in. So ask yourself, should we only demand receipts for donations, or should we start demanding them for democracy too? Across phones, smart TVs, diner screens, and airport terminals. No one spoke, but millions felt it. And for the first time, the nation wasn't just watching Jasmine Crockett, it was answering her. The camera didn't cut away. It stayed as if even the broadcast crew knew this moment was heavier than headlines. Jasmine remained frozen, not in fear, but in a silence that said more than any mic ever could. The paper Caleb had drawn on peeked from her blazer, the crayon lines trembling in the studio air. Somewhere off-screen, someone sniffled, but no one dared speak. The lighting dimmed slowly, not like a fade-out, but like the sun slipping behind a flag at half-mast. Even the hum of the room changed, softening from political battleground to something closer to sacred ground. There were no talking heads rushing in, no pundits ready with spin, just stillness in the shadow of a woman who refused to bow. Then the screen went black. No music, no sound. Only one sentence appeared white on black, like a tombstone carved in truth. Truth doesn't roar, it remembers. The words didn't need permission. They settled like dust on a casket, quiet, permanent, undeniable. Some truths don't need to shout, they just need one person brave enough to stand up, like Jasmine did, and remind a nation that charity should never be camouflaged for greed. She didn't just expose a fraud, she reignited a long-lost belief that hope is not a product for sale and silence is not an option. If we stay quiet when lies wear the mask of generosity, are we still on the side of truth? What moment in this story moved you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if it made you feel something, don't scroll. Speak, share. Remember, if this story shook something in, you don't just scroll past. Like, share, and subscribe to Hill Insights, where we don't just expose the truth, we hold it up for the world to see. Tap the bell because next time the lie might wear a smile. What part of this story made you stop and feel? Drop a comment below. Let's not just remember, let's refuse to forget. Together. This dramatized story is inspired by real struggles and real people. All characters and dialogue are fictionalized for commentary and education. It is not intended to defame or mislead, but to inspire reflection and civic awareness. Thanks for watching. Truth isn't over, it's just waiting for someone to hear it.